They say money can't buy happiness, and for me, that's the absolute truth. It brought me comfort, sure. But it also brought betrayal, heartbreak, and a loneliness I never expected. This is my story of how the search for love and family led to decisions I'm still trying to understand. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I've always been the kind of woman people think has it all. Wealth, independence, confidence, I worked hard for every bit of it. On the surface, my life looks perfect. But deep down, there's always been this void, a kind of emptiness that no amount of money could ever fill. I remember the day I closed my first major deal as CEO of my tech company. The champagne was flowing, the San Francisco skyline glittering through my office windows. Everyone was celebrating, but I felt strangely hollow inside. I had everything I thought I wanted, except for what mattered most. I've never had children of my own. It wasn't that I didn't want them, it just never happened. Instead, I poured my energy into building my empire. The tech world knows me as the Ice Queen of Silicon Valley. They say I'm ruthless in the boardroom, uncompromising in negotiations. But they don't see me at night, alone in my penthouse, staring at the bay and wondering where it all went wrong. Take my marriage to James Cooper, for example. He was everything I thought I wanted: Harvard MBA, sharp suits, perfect smile. Our wedding was featured in all the local magazines. Tech's power couple, they called us. James was charming, attentive, and seemed to understand my world. At least, that's what I thought in the beginning. Over time, though, the cracks started to show. It started with small things: questions about my company's financials, suggestions about joint investments. He wasn't building a life with me. He was living off mine. Every decision was about what I could provide, what I could give, what he could take. I ignored the red flags because I wanted to believe in us. The late-night meetings that grew more frequent. The mysterious business trips that never seemed to produce results. The way he'd dodge questions about where my investment money was going. Then came that rainy Tuesday evening when I got the call. My CFO's voice was hesitant on the phone. "Sarah, we've found some irregularities in the accounts." That's when my world started to unravel. James had been systematically draining money from our joint accounts. $500,000 here, $1 million there. All for his business ventures that didn't exist. But the money wasn't even the worst part. It was finding him with Jessica, his 23-year-old secretary, in our bed. In the home I'd paid for. On sheets I'd bought. The divorce was ugly, public, and painful. Tech blogs had a field day. Silicon Valley's Ice Queen gets frozen out. I threw myself into work after that. Doubled my company's revenue. Made even more money. Built my walls higher. But loneliness has a way of creeping in even through the strongest defenses. That's when I made my second mistake: Marcus Taylor. He came into my life through an exclusive dating app. Verified millionaires only, they promised. Marcus was different from James, or so I thought. No fancy degrees or corporate background. He was a self-made man, or so he claimed. A startup founder with big dreams and an even bigger smile. He talked about changing the world through technology. About making a difference. About love being more important than money. I wanted to believe him so badly. After James, I thought I'd learned my lesson. I thought I could spot the signs. But Marcus was better at the game. He didn't ask for money directly. Instead, he shared his dreams, his vision. Made me feel part of something bigger than myself. When he talked about his startup needing investors, I volunteered. $2 million. That's what hope cost me this time. Marcus disappeared a week later. No trace, no goodbye, nothing. Just an empty office space and a disconnected phone number. Later, I found out he was living in the Cayman Islands. My money probably paid for his beachfront villa. The press was brutal this time. Tech CEO falls for classic scam. Silicon Valley's ice queen melts for con man. I stopped reading the news after a while. Stopped dating completely. Focused on what I could control, my company, my success. But success is a cold companion on lonely nights. That's when I started seeing Dr. Reynolds, my therapist. She was the first person who really got me to look at what I wanted. Not what I thought I should want. Not what society expected me to want. But what Sarah Mitchell, the woman behind the CEO title, truly desired. "Have you ever considered adoption?" she asked one day. The question caught me off guard. I'd thought about it, vaguely, years ago. But now, at 38, single, with my history? "You have so much love to give," Dr. Reynolds said. "And there are children who need exactly what you can offer." That's when something shifted inside me. Maybe I'd been looking for love in all the wrong places. Maybe what I needed wasn't another chance at romance. Maybe it was a chance to be the kind of parent I wished I'd had. I spent months researching adoption agencies. Learning about the process. Reading stories of successful adoptions. And stories of failures too. I wanted to be prepared. I knew I didn't want an infant. There were plenty of people waiting for babies. But older kids, especially teenagers? They often got overlooked. That's how I found myself sitting in a small office at the adoption agency. Looking through files of children who needed homes. Who needed someone to believe in them. That's when I saw his picture. Alex Chen, age 14. Something in his eyes caught my attention. There was intelligence there, and hurt, and hope. His file told a story that broke my heart. Parents died in a house fire and he was 5. 8 different foster homes since then. But what struck me most were his school records. Perfect grades in math and science. Winner of 3 regional robotics competitions. A teacher's note: "Alex has extraordinary potential, if only given the chance." I knew right then. This was my chance too. Our first meeting was awkward, tentative. Alex was polite but guarded. I could see him assessing me, trying to figure out my angle. He'd probably seen too many potential parents come and go. "I heard you like coding," I said. His eyes lit up for just a moment. "I'm working on a neural network project," he said quietly. That was our beginning. 2 broken people, trying to find wholeness in each other. I didn't know then how complicated things would become. How love could be both healing and dangerous. How the lines between saving someone and losing yourself could blur. But that's a story for another time. Right now, I was just a woman who had everything except what mattered most. And he was just a boy who needed someone to believe in him. We were both searching for family. Neither of us knew the price we'd pay to find it. The day Alex moved in was a mix of excitement and terror. My penthouse suddenly felt both too big and too small. I'd spent weeks preparing his room, trying to make it perfect. Gaming computer, robotics kit, everything a tech-loving teenager could want. But when he walked in with his single duffel bag, I realized how little he actually had. 14 years of life packed into one bag. The first few weeks were like a carefully choreographed dance. Both of us trying not to step on each other's toes. Both afraid of making the wrong move. He'd ask permission to use the bathroom in his own home. I'd knock on his door 3 times before entering, even when it was wide open. We were both so afraid of messing this up. But slowly, things began to change. It started with small moments. Finding him asleep at his desk, lines of code still glowing on his screen. Teaching him how to make my grandmother's pancakes on Sunday mornings. The first time he called out Mom without thinking, then froze, looking terrified. I pretended not to notice, but my heart soared. Watching him excel at school became my greatest joy. His teachers couldn't stop praising him. Alex has a brilliant mind for engineering, they'd say. He could go to any college he wants. I made sure he knew that was true. Set up a college fund that would cover any school he chose. Started taking him to tech conferences, introducing him to industry leaders. Watching his confidence grow was like watching a flower bloom in time-lapse. Then came the science fair project that changed everything. Alex had been working on it for months. An AI-driven prosthetic hand that could learn from user behavior. The night before the fair, something went wrong with the programming. He was devastated, ready to give up. I stayed up all night with him, debugging code line by line. We finally fixed it at 4 a.m., both exhausted but triumphant. That's when he hugged me for the first time. Really hugged me, not the awkward side hugs we'd shared before. "Thanks, Mom," he whispered. He won first place the next day. I sat in the audience, crying like a fool. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm after that. Morning coffee and coding discussions. Weekend trips to maker fairs and tech museums. Late-night conversations about quantum computing and the future of AI. For the first time in my life, I felt complete. Then I met David Wright at one of Alex's robotics competitions. He was a pediatric surgeon, there with his nephew. Tall, distinguished, with kind eyes and salt and pepper hair. Alex noticed me noticing him. "You should talk to him, Mom," he said, grinning. "He keeps looking over here." I hesitated, but Alex practically pushed me toward David. We started talking about medical robotics. Ended up discussing everything but. David was different from the others. He didn't care about my money or my company. He cared about his patients, about making a difference. When he asked me to dinner, Alex was more excited than I was. "He's not like James or Marcus," Alex insisted. "I can tell." And he was right. David was genuine, caring, thoughtful. He made me laugh in a way I hadn't in years. For 8 months, everything was perfect. David fit seamlessly into our little family. He'd help Alex with his science projects. Bring medical cases for Alex to analyze. We'd have family dinners where we'd discuss the intersection of medicine and technology. I started to believe in love again. Started to think maybe I could have it all. Then David started pulling away. Becoming distant, distracted. At first, I thought it was about us. About me. But when he finally opened up, it was something else entirely. He'd lost a young patient on the operating table. Couldn't save her despite everything he tried. The PTSD from years of similar cases was finally catching up to him. "I need to step back," he said, tears in his eyes. "I need to get help before I can be there for anyone else." It hurt, but I understood. Sometimes love means letting go. Alex was devastated when David left. Not just for me, but for himself. He'd grown close to David, looked up to him. That's when our late-night talks started becoming more frequent. Alex would come to my room, unable to sleep. We'd talk about everything and nothing. about his fears of being abandoned again, about my fears of never being enough. Sometimes he'd fall asleep in my bed, like a small child seeking comfort. I should have seen the warning signs. Should have maintained better boundaries. But I was lonely too. Vulnerable. And Alex was becoming the emotional support I'd always craved. He understood me in a way no one else did. We shared the same wounds, the same fears. The same need for action. Looking back, I can see how things started to shift. How our relationship began to blur in dangerous ways. But at the time, it felt natural. Inevitable even. We were two broken people who'd found healing in each other. Neither of us realized we were heading toward a cliff. Neither of us saw how our need for love could become something else. Something that would force us to question everything we thought we knew about family. About love. About ourselves. The storm was coming. And we were completely unprepared for its force. It started on a night like any other. The San Francisco fog rolling in, blanketing the city in gray. Alex had been particularly quiet that evening. I found him in his room, staring at his computer screen, not really seeing it. "What's wrong?" I asked, sitting on the edge of his bed. He turned to me, his eyes filled with something I couldn't quite read. "Do you ever wonder if we're too close?" he whispered. The question hit me like a physical blow. Because I had wondered. Had felt the shift in our relationship but didn't want to acknowledge it. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice carefully neutral. He moved to sit beside me, too close. "I don't know how to explain it," he said. I feel different when I'm with you." My heart was pounding so hard I was sure he could hear it. "Alex," I started, but he cut me off. "I know it's wrong," he said quickly. "I know I shouldn't feel this way. But you're the only person who's ever really understood me. The only one who's never left." I should have stopped him there. Should have maintained boundaries. Should have been the adult. Instead, I let him take my hand. Let him lean his head on my shoulder. Let the line between mother and something else blur even further. "I love you," he whispered. 3 simple words that should have been beautiful. Should have been pure. Instead, they terrified me. Because I knew he didn't mean them the way a son should. And part of me, the broken, lonely part, understood exactly what he meant. That night changed everything. We crossed a line we could never uncross. Not physically, we never went that far. But emotionally, we'd ventured into dangerous territory. The next few weeks were a blur of confusion and guilt. Every interaction felt loaded with meaning. Every touch, every look, every word carried double weight. I started avoiding being alone with him. He started seeking out reasons to be near me. We were caught in a dance neither of us knew how to stop. Until the night he tried to kiss me. It wasn't aggressive or forceful. Just a gentle lean forward, his intentions clear in his eyes. I jumped back like I'd been burned. "No," I said firmly, finally finding my voice. "This has to stop." The look of hurt and rejection on his face nearly broke me. But I knew I had to be strong. Had to be the parent he needed, not the partner he thought he wanted. "We need help," I told him. "Professional help." He didn't argue. I think part of him was relieved. The next day, I started making calls. Found a therapist who specialized in adoption trauma. Another who dealt with attachment disorders. We both started individual counseling. And slowly, painfully, we began to understand what had happened. How my own loneliness had created an unhealthy dependency. How Alex's abandonment issues had manifested in confused feelings. How we'd both been seeking love in the wrong places. The hardest part was deciding he needed to go away for college. Not just anywhere, but far away. MIT had always been his dream. Now it would be his salvation. And mine. "I don't want to leave you," he said when the acceptance letter came. "You're not leaving me," I assured him. "You're growing up. This is what's supposed to happen." The day I dropped him off at college was both heartbreaking and healing. His dorm room was filled with other excited freshmen. Future engineers and scientists, just like him. As I helped him unpack, I could see him already beginning to change. To become the man he was meant to be. Not the confused boy who'd sought something impossible from his adoptive mother. Our goodbye was quick, almost formal. But as I turned to leave, he called out, "Mom?" I turned back. "Thank you," he said. "For stopping us. For being the parent I needed." I nodded, unable to speak through my tears. That was 3 years ago. Alex is thriving at MIT now. Top of his class, working on groundbreaking AI research. We still talk regularly, but it's different. Healthier. He's dating a girl in his program. I've started seeing someone too, a fellow tech CEO who understands my world. The love between Alex and me hasn't diminished. It's just found its proper place. Sometimes I think about that difficult time. About how close we came to destroying everything. But mostly, I think about how love can heal even when it hurts. How sometimes the hardest choices are the ones that save us. Alex will graduate next year. He's already had offers from major tech companies. Including mine, though we both know he needs to make his own path. I'm proud of him. Proud of us. Proud that we found our way back to what we were always meant to be. Mother and son. Nothing more, nothing less. And that's enough. More than enough. It's everything. End.